again, and welcome to Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy. I'm your host, certified sex therapist Laurie Watson, author of Wanting Sex Again, and blogger at Psychology Today and WebMD. And I have with me Dr. Adam Mathews, my co-host, who's a couples therapist, psychotherapist, and president of NCAMFT. Foreplay is dedicated to helping couples keep it hot. Each episode, we cover an aspect of sex that impacts your sex life and something that you can relate to. So if you find our discussions helpful, please give us a review on iTunes or Stitcher. We would love it if you would tell a friend about us. You can find us also on the web at foreplayrst.com. And if you have a comment or a topic that you'd like us to talk about, we'd love to hear from you. Please send them to us at info@foreplayrst.com. Thanks for listening. Now on to today's topic. Okay, so Adam, this is so great. It's the new year, and we've done our New Year's. I know, but it's about to snow here in Raleigh, and we got to get Adam home so he's not like stuck in the sleet. And
yeah. But we're 1 week into the new year. How are you doing on your resolutions?
I'm doing good.
Yeah,
I'm doing really good. Yeah.
This is about the
not
time.
Eating today, probably not for the next year. And
mine are doing good right now, but in a week we'll see. That'll be the real test. They're always really good the first week of January.
That's good. You know, we were joking around. We're going to talk about sex and pregnancy today.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to talk about sex and pregnancy. But one joke that we were kidding around, I saw it on Twitter, was, you know, January 1st, the husband says to the wife, you know, honey, we haven't had sex all year. You know? I don't know.
All those year-end jokes. We haven't had sex since last year.
Yeah.
It's been forever.
Yeah. So we were throwing that around. That was funny.
Yeah.
But we have a reader who wrote in and said, hey, talk about sex and pregnancy and, you know, the difficulties that happen with it. Yeah.
Well, you'll have to tell me, because I've never been pregnant, from
Bada bing.
What are the difficulties? What are the complications of being pregnant?
Well, you have had a wife that was
human.
pregnant.
I have.
So
And I mean, she's
several times.
Yeah, she's been pregnant several times. And so she's told me about that, but I still think there's somewhat of a disconnect for men because to
really know what it's like to be female and to be pregnant and how that impacts your sexuality.
Yeah, because there's other experiences in life that I think I can relate to my wife on that she's had. We can share.
Yeah.
But this one's almost completely it's completely foreign to me.
Right.
And so trying to understand it from her perspective is a bit of a challenge.
Yeah. I mean, I think that sexually, you know, there's 3 trimesters, and each of them have their different challenges and downsides and upsides. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, the first challenge is the first trimester, which, you know, kind of you're sort of wiped out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to explain, but I remember, you know, week 3 coming home from work, and I have a lot of energy, and I have a lot of energy for sex. And week 3 coming home, you know, pregnant for 3 weeks and basically going to sleep.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it was like I had the flu, just that sense of no energy, no nothing.
The quote that my wife throws out me during the first trimester all the time is she found a quote in one pregnancy book that said it was like especially the first trimester was like you were climbing a mountain every single day. That every day you climbed a mountain. She would tell me that all the day. She was like, back off, I'm climbing a mountain right now, is what she would say. And that made more sense to me when I thought about it like that about the energy that is expended of growing another human.
And I know that, you know, men say all the time, but I would want sex even if I were tired. That's not a stumbling block. But I think for women, because it requires so much concentration to reach orgasm and the whole experience requires a lot more energy really for her to have, you know, feeling associated with it, you know, her own internal subjective feeling. That lack of energy, I know nobody likes this, but it's true. Yeah. It's a killer.
But it's a different
kills desire.
From what I can pick up, it seems like it's a different kind of tired than just end of the day.
Well, it's
you're
something
tired.
You can't do anything about it, right? Yeah. I mean, if you're end of the day, you did too much. I mean, you can make adjustments, but this is something physiologically. I mean, I suppose it's any kind of hormonal state or physiological state or an illness or something. It's like, you know, do you want to have sex when you have the flu? You know, if you didn't feel so bad, but you were just that kind of wiped out, it's like, well, you know, the thought's there. It sounds great, but no.
Yeah. I think there's also a bit of sometimes a confusion, at least from a male perspective, on the idea of I don't want to speak too much about my wife's experiences because she's not here. But I know that
I'll defend you.
That one of the things that I've heard is, because you mentioned it like being the flu, of it coming from, well, I'm not an invalid. Like, don't do all that for me because I can still, because I tried to do everything.
Aww,
you know,
he's
I know
a great
that's
guy.
right. I'm telling you, but. And I know other men that do that too, that got reprimanded for doing
too much
and treating their wife as if she was sick during pregnancy. So can you talk about that balance there between, if we're respecting the fact that she's tired,
damned if you do and damned if you don't.
That's right.
If
I think that's
like,
what
you're trying to caretake for her and take care of her and make sure she's okay, and you know that she is around that little baby, right?
Yep.
And so there's that paternal protection thing that gets triggered in you right away. But then she's saying, you know, I'm capable.
Yep.
Don't infantilize me. Don't make me feel like I'm not capable.
That's right. At least that's the message that I think men sometimes get when their wife or partner is going through pregnancy.
You know, I cannot probably over describe the vulnerability that it feels like to have a human being grown inside you. I mean, I just can't explain that. And there is this sense of needing care, you know, needing to share this. But there's also this sense of, you know, I'm an independent woman and I want to do it myself. I think that that's the hard thing about pregnancy is there is a bit of having to surrender to the fact that my body is changing, you know, in a quick way.
Yeah.
And suddenly the things that, you know, used to be easy for me, you know, I'm clumsy, I'm tripping, I'm off balance. I mean, there's all kinds of things that are hard about the needs that I think a woman feels for perhaps more assistance and the sense of, but doggone it, you know, I'm an adult, I can take care of myself. I don't know. It's anytime, right? Anytime we have an instant state change from being independent into a place where maybe we're not quite as able. I mean, it's like when we get sick, right? Some of us want to be, you know, taken care of and coddled, and others of us say, leave me alone, let me just get through it. You know, it just depends.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think she's probably warring with that inside. It's like, you know, I am capable. And then there are ways that when you're pregnant, your agility is reduced, you know, you ache, you don't get as much rest. I mean, there are things that are reduced.
So you're talking about kind of maybe that internal conflict that a woman experiences when she's pregnant comes out in the relationship.
And snaps at her husband.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's that, but there's also just the knowing that conflict just kind of becomes a dominant part of the relationship that both of them are trying to figure out in that relationship.
And I, especially first pregnancy, right? I mean, you're suddenly becoming a family. There is a third person even when you're pregnant. I mean, you know, it's just like it's growing and you have all these fantasies about it in terms of what will this do to our relationship. And I mean, I think one thing I hear for women too, in terms of sexually, how they feel about it is their body starts to change so quickly. Yeah. You know, their breasts grow, and in our culture that should be a great thing, but not necessarily. I mean, it depends. Some women don't like that, and it doesn't necessarily feel comfortable. So they may have breast development, but not comfortable to be touched because it hurts. Yeah. You know, so it's like this crazy sense, and their stomach grows, and I think in our culture, a woman's stomach growing, even though we know intellectually it's a baby, I think that, you know, our culture esteems and lauds the flat belly. Yeah. You know, so suddenly you have this and you're gaining weight, which is normal and natural. And I think there's a lot of fear in women about, am I going to gain weight? And, you know, there's stretch marks. I mean, there's all kinds of difficult physiological changes. So in terms of their sexual feelings of attractiveness, for a lot of women, there's fear and there's worry. Will I be as attractive? Will I be as attractive afterwards? Am I attractive right now? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so the affirmation of that would seem to then be very important, that it's normal and natural for those changes to be occurring. But is that even possible from the outside? Is it possible for the man to affirm his female partner in that way?
I would hope that, I mean, that helps, right? Certainly if she's struggling with it in the inside, saying it from the outside of how attractive he finds her would only help. I knew this friend, this guy, he was about 10 years older than I was, but I remember he loved pregnant women. He just thought they were so beautiful and so particularly sexy. I didn't know while I was pregnant or anything. He was just a friend. But it would have been helpful to hear that kind of like, just this guy. Pregnant women were it, not a fetish. He was a normal guy, but
he just thought they were beautiful.
He saw the beauty in it, in the whole thing. And his wife was pregnant, I think, 3 times, and she talked about how beautiful she felt because of his constant sort of admiration, and that can't hurt.
Yeah,
because I think for a lot of women, our desire is wrapped up in, do we feel desirable? So even though he may say, I still want to have sex with you, I find you just as desirable. If she doesn't feel that, it can really impact her.
Yeah. And
probably second trimester, I think, is when, you really start to show and your body starts to make all those changes. And
do you feel like that? Well, like the common thing is that you have more energy in the second trimester. So does that change your sexual desire?
The second trimester, yeah, it really does. I think that for a lot of women, the hormones that start to surge second trimester, they feel a lot more sexual. That's the good news, is they really, feel desire. And as long as she can, go with it and think her body is beautiful, and he thinks so as well, it can be the best time of their life. Because also she has kind of a heavier body, and her pelvis can actually be more responsive to orgasm, because of the blood flow and stuff. Same with when a woman gets close on her period, to starting her period.
So have you found that there's a standard? I've heard different things about whether libido for women goes up or down during pregnancy than what their normal is.
I think it's like a bell curve.
Okay.
It's low that first trimester. It goes way up the second trimester, and then it goes down the last trimester just because you're tired and awkward and big.
Yeah. Okay.
So
I think there's also, that kind of talks about some of the difficulties from the woman's side, but perhaps after the break we can come back and talk about what are the difficulties from the husband or male partner's side that might be getting in the way of sex during pregnancy.
Okay, that sounds great. You're listening to Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy with Dr. Adam Mathews and sex therapist Laurie Watson.
Wanting sex again. How to rediscover desire and heal a sexless marriage by certified sex therapist Laurie Watson.
Each chapter is designed to fix one of the problems that cause low libido, from early marriage through the childbearing years, even all the way through menopause. I've also had men read it and tell me that for them it was the most hopeful thing they read about resolving sexual problems.
Look for Wanting Sex Again on Amazon.com. You can also talk to Laurie Watson for therapy in person or via Skype.
I offer couples counseling and sex therapy, and I think about both aspects of the relationship, emotional intimacy and sexual technique, and that combination together helps marriages be happy.
Weekend couples intensives are also offered. Improve your sex and improve your relationship with Awakening Center for Couples and Intimacy. Find out more at awakenloveandsex.com. Awaken what's possible.
It is one of my great joys in life to be able to really help individuals and couples find strength in their relationships and really find hope again.
Licensed marriage and family therapist, Dr. Adam Mathews from Mathews Counseling.
I work with a wide variety of issues, including depression and anxiety, marital issues with adolescents. I believe that therapy should be designed around you, that it should be personalized to who you are and to your unique situation.
Therapy is available in office, online, and by phone.
I want therapy to be comfortable for everyone. At our office, you'll find that we sit around a fireplace in deep, comfortable chairs, look at the problem differently, and offer practical solutions for you to take home and utilize outside of the therapy room.
Schedule today and rediscover hope.
You can find me on the web at mathewscounseling.net, Mathews with 1 T. You can contact us through email or phone and find a lot of resources on our website, mathewscounseling.net.
You're back to Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy with sex therapist Laurie Watson and Dr. Adam Mathews, couples therapist. We're your hosts, and we are talking about sex and pregnancy.
Right.
And Adam, you said that we were going to talk a little bit this half of the podcast about how men are feeling about their wives being pregnant and the sexual problems that happen during that season.
Yeah, I think we talked a bit about that in the beginning, where I think we talked about her internal conflict over what's happening to her body and what's happening to her, I think even probably emotionally that's going through. And I think one of the difficulties, and you tell me if you've heard this from your couples, but the man has a hard time, especially if it's his first one, knowing exactly what to do, right? And because there are things that are changing in their family, in their couple relationship, especially we talked about if the low energy in the first trimester, if they're having sex regularly, that could radically change in that first trimester, no matter if they've talked about it before. I have a couple that are thinking about having a baby, and we talk about the things that they're expecting to be different, and they are determined that the frequency of which they're having sex is not going to change. And as much as I've tried to prepare them for that, like that is completely normal for their frequency of their sex to go down, especially during that first trimester. They just have a hard time believing that. And so I think that's one of the difficulties for men is when that happens.
Because I think as a male, you're not going through any kind of hormonal changes.
Right.
So your hormones are constant.
Yeah.
I mean, they're the same rate that they were before the pregnancy and after the pregnancy. And so desire is usually pretty steady.
Right.
So, I mean, what do you do when suddenly your partner is like, woo, up and down?
Yeah.
And I mean, it is really tough.
I think there's a little bit of, and I don't think this is necessarily fair, because I think the women that have been pregnant that are listening would think that it's not fair, but it is a little bit isolating. I think there's an element of which, and again, especially if it's your first child, if it's your second child, you probably anticipate this happening a little bit more. You're a little bit more prepared. But before you're pregnant, you are spending your time together. If your couplehood is good, you're spending time together. You're coming home together. You're eating dinner together. You're ending the day together, talking, whatever it is that your normal routine is. And then when you get pregnant, your wife is tired. She wants to go to bed, and so she wants to go to sleep. So all of a sudden, I think you're by yourself a lot more,
and it changes that mix of autonomy and closeness, right?
That's right.
I mean, suddenly, physiologically, she needs more autonomy. She needs more sleep. My husband's favorite joke is Laurie needs 8 hours of autonomy every day when she's asleep.
Just completely in your little sleep cocoon. Just
other than that, I like connection. I like to hang out and be together or to be with people. But I think that's, especially if you are maybe the pursuing partner.
That's right.
And your partner suddenly becomes apparently more avoidant just because they need more sleep, it can throw things off in terms of your feelings and your emotional sense of connection in the relationship. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's hard.
Let alone the sexual connection, because she's out cold.
That's right. But I think that's hard sometimes for female partners to understand that from the male perspective. And I think like all deference needs to be given to the person that is growing the other person.
I know.
Like I'm not taking that away, because that is I mean, you're carrying somebody else. So deference to that. So not trying to whine or complain about on the men's side. Just saying that I think that's something to acknowledge, is that when that's happening, is that your normal rhythms of your partnership get thrown out of whack.
Right. And I think this is so hard in any kind of condition, whether it's pregnancy or illness or absence, the fact that when one partner has a markedly different libido instantly because of this intervening problem, and then the other one is left to cope. I think that it's really hard as like a caretaker or as a husband of a person who's pregnant to say, hey, wait, I've got needs too.
Yeah.
Suddenly that can almost feel selfish to say, but I still have some needs and I need you in this way. And I think that, you got to talk about that.
Yeah.
If anything, I would say to you, use our podcast.
Yep.
To say, to talk to your wife about it and say, it's okay. I mean, both people have needs and you can be respectful of both. But I think absolutely there has to be some sort of accommodation sexually I mean, I think what I found was there were highs and lows that were different. I was always a 10 o'clock in the morning girl. That's my best time, And suddenly, but you're working, and so you're not with your partner at 10 o'clock, and Saturday comes and you're sleeping in. But I think that for what we did is, and this is what I would suggest, is on the weekends at least, where is the high in terms of energy?
Yeah, and then using that to connect sexually.
Yeah, using that time to connect sexually, because at least, early on when you're pregnant, you don't have that little toddler to run after.
Yeah.
Who also needs looking at. That's coming, right?
Yep, that's right.
And that is difficult as well.
Yeah. So I think what I hear you saying there is that pregnancy can be a time to also begin to practice what's going to happen when the baby comes.
Right.
So some good habits of talking about it, having it on a regular basis, finding when your energy is, and kind of game planning for when you do have that kid in your life. That's going to change your relationship as well.
Yeah. What do you think men also go through?
I think that there is and I want to say this carefully, a logistics issue that starts to present itself.
That's true.
That is just that sometimes can be difficult to talk about.
Sure.
From just, like I said, your normal rhythms are off anyway, relationally. Right. But I think that the reality is it changes what you do sexually. I mean, you mentioned that if her breasts are sensitive and don't want to be touched anymore, if that was a regular part of foreplay, that was a regular part of sex, like that becomes, you have to change what you normally do. You got to change your moves. And so I think that's
more man on top.
That's, exactly. I think so that, I think those things start to become issues they might fumble through a little bit, but they don't begin about talking about, especially what's going to be the best ways, best positions for them, what's going to change about the logistics of having sex, foreplay, all of that stuff. That's going to continue to make it enjoyable for them, but may have to be talked about. And I think that for a man, that sometimes can be a difficult subject to broach
and to
with
say
his partner.
what he might like. I mean, it does seem like the fumbling, like you said, around sexual positions can come because this might be the first time a couple has ever had to talk about.
Yep.
What do we do here? What do you like? What feels good? And the thing during pregnancy, guys, is things that did feel good don't feel good, and things that, didn't feel good do feel good. I mean, it's just crazy. Women tell me all the time, my breasts were nothing. They didn't feel anything to me before I got pregnant, and then suddenly they were too sensitive or very sensitive, and vice versa. I mean, it's just a crazy experience internally. But I think that what would we like to say to them is maybe go home and talk about, could you just give me the top 3 things that feel good when we make love?
Yep.
Or, if you think about making love right now, what would be the best position that you would think would be most comfortable, and just flat out ask.
Well, and I think one of the things that I hear you mention and that would be good is what's changed is for men to go home and ask their wives, what's changed sexually for you since you become pregnant? What's feeling good, like you were saying, what's not, what are the areas to avoid? Because it seems like, tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like there would be areas that you would want that may need to just be completely avoided. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Or other things that just knowing what's changed, what feels good, would be some important questions to ask.
Exactly.
Anyway,
I think that one thing we haven't said is, what about if the guy isn't as attracted to her? I mean, we've talked about how frightening that would be for a woman. And I think for a man, that can be frightening too. What if this is a permanent state? What if she doesn't come back into a shape that I do feel attraction for? And I think a lot of that is psychological. He sees her as mother. And we've talked a lot about that in other podcasts, where just this sense of, okay, she's no longer party girl, my sex partner. She's now mother. And everything that comes with a man's thinking about mother kind of gets overlaid on her. And I think that can really diminish, sexual attraction.
Yeah. To me, that seems very much about an expectation that is faulty going into either going into marriage or going into pregnancy.
That we're going to stay the same.
Yeah. That's an expectation that should be okay to have. I mean, I would just challenge that. I think even understanding that from a male perspective, I think there has to be some kind of shift, almost an education of what is going to happen. And understanding that if you're going to agree to get pregnant in the first place, I think men have to be much fairer to women in that, in that respect.
Part of the price is her body is probably going to change.
Yep.
I mean, it's hard to give birth to even, a 7-pound baby and not have some stretch marks or not have breasts that droop some. I mean, it's just hard to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's
that's kind of the cost for both of them is what you're saying. They should both count that cost.
Yeah. I think you have to count that. Not that she can't be beautiful or that you can't be attracted to her. I think that's what I'm saying is the misnomer. Is that because her body changes that you can't continue to be attracted to her, that you can't continue to be physically attracted to her, or that it's always going to be the way that it is when she's pregnant.
Right. And I think part of it is to focus on the parts that are attractive and beautiful. I mean, when we are dating and we think the other one is perfect, actually we're focusing on what we love and what is darn perfect.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's the same sort of thing with our personality flaws. When we're dating, we screen out those things that we don't like. And I think it's, as we go through different developmental stages in our marriage and our bodies change and we age minimally, right? Yeah. We have to remember the youth. We have to focus on the things that are beautiful.
Yeah.
So
I think there's one more thing that I'd like your input on too is whether or not that a couple can, in a good way that is empowering to both parties, to talk about how to stay in shape that's good during the pregnancy and also good after the pregnancy that's not shaming to the woman, but is also empowering to say for men to say this is how we're going to kind of manage some of this and this is how we're going to stay in shape together in a way that's beneficial to both of them. Is there a way to even have that conversation, or do you think that conversation is fair?
Hopefully, I think, as a couple, maybe it's New Year's and we're all having still resolutions. But, many people say, we want to be in shape. Yeah. We want to be healthy. And maybe that's a conversation of, I want to be healthy. I mean, certainly we don't want a husband micromanaging what puts in our mouth. Forget
absolutely,
that.
Absolutely.
But on the other hand, saying we want to take the child outside every day. We need to get into the habit of walks. Let's do that. I mean, that helps. There's really good reason to lower carbohydrate when you're pregnant because your baby actually stays smaller, so it's an easier delivery. Because if you eat too many carbohydrates, oftentimes there's, your baby can absorb that sugar. Women are frequently pre-diabetic and diabetic when they're pregnant, even the ones who don't know it. If you have a 9-pound baby, hate to tell it to you, but sister, you were diabetic. And so, keeping the carbs low helps with weight control, and it also helps with an easier delivery. So that might be something to talk about and talk with the doctor. Go to the doctor's appointments. Say, how can we bring the healthy baby into this world? What do we need to do as a couple? How can I encourage that? I think there's a fine line, though, between controlling it and setting it as a mutual value.
Yeah.
I think if she says, hey, walk with me, I need that support, that's awesome.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that possibly that's a better, if you don't feel like you can have that conversation where it's mutual and it's mutually beneficial, it might be a better conversation not to have at all.
Dicey.
Yeah, it is.
Very dicey.
It is. But that's why we're asked. I mean, that's what we're here to ask the hard questions, right?
Yeah. Okay. So thanks for listening. This is sex therapist Laurie Watson and couples therapist Dr. Adam Mathews with Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy. Thanks for listening. Hey, help us stay on top here at Foreplay. We'd love it if you would subscribe and share it with your friends. And please take 1 sec and rate and review us. Thanks so much.